Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you very much. So, Michael is just online, and we'll probably be doing shortly, but everyone knows this is the superintendent's presentation to us, the operating budget. And there are generally no questions this evening. We will talk about after the presentation how we will organize this capital base. We've done the prior year. We'll put together sort of a Google Doc, and this is for the problem now. So I'll turn it over to you like we go. I'll make sure I am.
Yep, sure.
So maybe you want to wait 1 second, Dr. Greenwich? Sure. Thank you. And we don't have anything.
Mike says he can't hear.
Current moment, there's not much.
Yeah.
We can hear you. We just can't hear anyone talking into a microphone.
Okay, what about now?
I heard
Check.
that, but it sounded like ambient noise and not someone speaking into a microphone.
Check, check.
Sounds like ambient noise, not someone talking into a microphone.
Okay. No, it's not. Check, check.
That sounded better.
Beautiful. We're just waiting for coding, then we're going to get started. Oh,
Can you
never mind.
please ask Dr. Jones to test her microphone?
Testing.
Te- Loud and clear.
Okay. How did you guys set this one up to go? It's not going on the arrow.
Thank you, Jonathan. You need to go on the PowerPoint. Is this the PowerPoint? Yeah. All right, let's see. I will click on the little arrows.
Okay. Okay. Good evening, Board of Education, cabinet members, and broader Greenwich community. I'm delighted to be here tonight to present the 2023-2024 operating budget for Greenwich Public Schools. I want to start with just one slide on capital. As a reminder, we had an accelerated schedule this year for the broader community. So the Board of Education has already approved their capital budget at $121,714,311. And there are basically 6 major projects that are part of that larger budget. And if you would like more information, it is available on our budget page on greenwichpublicschools.org. In preparing for the operating budget, we do a tremendous amount of work. It really is quite a process. We examine our current academic needs. We look at our previous and current budgets, sometimes going back 10 or 15 years. We analyze our enrollment projection data. We evaluate for staffing adjustments. We also look at our estimated fixed cost, especially in a year like this year. We also look at local, state, and federal funding information. And one of the local sources that we get every year is our BET guidelines. And this year they're quite stringent. So we wanted to go ahead and just walk through those for those of you who didn't have a chance to actually read them. They did acknowledge that our contractual labor costs and services, if our services were going up 2%, would increase our budget by 3.5%. They also acknowledged that once we add utilities into our budget, that it would increase the school budget by 4.5%. We were requested this year to try to lower our operational cost by 1.6% or 2.8 million, entitled a challenge budget. To explore consolidating additional services, we're asked to look at facility utilization, for instance, closing a school building, and also to look at a reduction in staff, which many people refer to as headcount in Greenwich. So the budget is a 12-month process. And probably the hardest month for us is really that June, July, August timeframe, where on June 30th, we close out the current budget. It takes June and July. In July 1, we're opening the new school year. And then we are also starting to build the next year's operational and capital budgets. And we do present our budget in Greenwich earlier than almost every school district in Connecticut. So we go through what we would call reflection and refinement. And this is really looking at what is the mission of the district? What is it that we want to accomplish with our operational budget? We want to make sure that our budget pays attention to the development of the whole child, not just academics, but academic, personal, and interpersonal. We look at our student achievement results, and there is a very detailed achievement result online for those people who are interested. We look at our math results. We look at our ELA results. We also look at our college readiness outcomes, and you'll notice we've held strong throughout COVID. And I would say from our college readiness, and these are our advanced placement scores, we are excited that last year we gave about 140 more exams than we did the year before, which is really what we want to see. We want more students challenging themselves. We also look well beyond just standardized test scores. And again, development of the whole child. This was a great story that ran on NBC News of one of our AVID students who was graduating from college, first in her family to go to college. In this program, we do such wonderful work through our AVID program. Hundreds of students have been impacted. And I have to give the Alliance some credit. They've now expanded this program where they stay with these students all the way through college and give them college scholarships and set them up with mentors to make sure that our Greenwich Public School students are successful. We also have one of the strongest science research programs in the country. And I think everybody recognizes that. This year, we just started the science research class, which is offered to our 8th graders. Again, we're the only research class of this type in the state of Connecticut. Very excited about that. And also, when we talk about development of the whole child, Dr. Fleischman was superintendent here for many years, and we've had decades of honoring community service. And if you have a chance to go to an award ceremony, go to this one at the end of the year. It's so wonderful to see. We also have a dual language program that many people don't realize we have in New Lebanon that is fabulous. And last but not least, we want to make sure we build a budget that supports our teachers so that we recruit and retain the very best. And this is Tyler McCosey. You can see on there from Western, who was our district Teacher of the Year, Distinguished Teacher last year. We're also celebrating this year the niche rankings. And to be ranked number 3 in Connecticut, there's a lot of pride with that. The niche ranking is a holistic ranking. It doesn't just look at one score or one component. And niche does look at over 100,000 schools and districts across the country. And I think one thing we're really proud of is that we're at 99.3 when you look at the percentile across the country, one of the best school districts in the country. When we look at our student demographic information this year, you'll see that we're at 8,579 students. That does include 44 outplaced students. They're included there because the state includes outplaced. The state does not include our settlements, although they are part of the budgeting process. For our English language learners, you'll see we're slightly trending back up again. We are at 4.7%. We went down for a year or two, again, back up. You'll see on our free and reduced, we're starting to trend back up. We do believe, and we said this last year, that last year's bar was really artificially low because of the COVID free and reduced program across the country where any student could eat for free. So we really didn't, students and families didn't need to turn in the paperwork. So we're seeing that trend back up now because that program will expire at the end of November or beginning of December when the money runs out. We also have consistently strong graduation rate, 96, 97%. You'll notice this is the 2021, and that's primarily because we don't have the result for 21-22, that we should get that probably in December. When we talk about facility utilization, we do go back and look all the way to the 1960s. What has our enrollment looked like? And on this chart, what you'll see is in 1970 was our high with 11,110 students. The lowest we've seen since the 60s is 1988 with 6,453. And one of the trends we also look at, there are a lot of people that will talk about closing Parkway or when Parkway closed. And again, that's part of the guidelines for us this year to look deeply at facility utilization. And what you'll notice is the arrow on the left is when Parkway closed. The arrow on the right is when Parkway was reopened. And you can see Parkway was reopening when it was well below 8,000. When you look far over on the right-hand side, we are nowhere near that right now. The other thing that's really changed is in 1985, right before you have that second red arrow, that's when the federal law came into place for preschool. And we are now mandated to educate students with special needs from the ages of 3 to 5. From a utilization standpoint, that's making a tremendous difference in Greenwich. And I want to talk about preschool for just a few minutes. In a preschool class, the number 15 is important because that's how many students you have in one classroom. So in our buildings, when we have a preschool, if we have 4 preschool classes, you're looking at many fewer students than what you would have if you had 4 fourth grade students, for instance, with 25 in each class. There's a big difference and they take the same amount of space. Prior to 2019, 2020, we used to have general education students. We would have 11 students and 4 children, maybe 5 towards the end of the year that had special needs. So that meant you added a new class every time you had 4 or 5 new identified students. On the right-hand side, what you see is in 1920, we changed that ratio to be 9 students from general ed and 6 special needs, which means by the end of the year, every 6 or 7 students is when we add a section of preschool. It has maintained high quality preschool, but it's made a tremendous difference in slowing the growth of our preschool program from a financial standpoint and space utilization. So if you look back at 2012, we had 48 students with special needs. We are now well over 100. And again, when you start thinking about every 6 or 7 students, you need a new classroom, it changes quickly. And what you can see on this slide is that by changing the model, which is that light blue right in the middle, where it has a 14, we had 14 classrooms of preschool. And you'll see over the next 3 years, we've been able to absorb more students, 20 odd plus more students, up to over 100 without adding a tremendous amount of sections. If we had not changed that ratio, we would have 21 classrooms of preschool today. And that's just in the last, counting this year, 4 years. Then we look at kindergarten, which is that next grade level, which can always be tricky because they're coming into us brand new. Kindergarten enrollment is typically driven by birth rate. However, enrollment this year was up in kindergarten by 59 students or 3 classrooms, much more than we anticipated. And the increase in kindergarten this year was largely due to new family enrollment. So when we look at what's happening in K-5 enrollment overall, people will often ask, why are we going down in enrollment? What's causing that? It's really the turnover of larger graduating classes, which is the second column. For instance, this year in yellow, we'll lose 708 seniors. And coming into kindergarten as that replacement class was 635. But again, you'll notice it has a 6 in front of it. It was supposed to have a 5. So we actually grew this year again, by 3 sections that we were not anticipating. And so the next few years will be very interesting to see if this is a trend or if this was just a one time. When we look at K-5 classrooms over time, I think this slide is really important because I will have a lot of people ask us, well, if enrollment's going down, why are you not losing K-12 section or K-5 sections? The reality is we are losing K-5 sections. And this goes back to 2016. And by next year, we will be down 20 K-5 sections. And we're really quite fortunate that this has been happening. Otherwise, our operating budget would look very, very different because we've been able to take a 3rd grade, maybe we have one less 3rd grade. We've been able to take that 3rd grade position and utilize that as a pre-K position to be cost neutral in the budget. And our facility utilization is being helped tremendously. Again, when we're going down K-5 sections, we have somewhere to put a new pre-K classroom. So when you look at enrollment going out in projections, we are expected to take a very small dip in K-5 and then go right back up again. 6 through 8 looks very similar. They'll start to go down. They're not huge swings trending downwards. High school holds relatively flat, then it will follow the same pattern. And again, anytime you see them going down on the far right as a high school, remember you're going up in elementary, you're going up in middle school. So a wave is going to be coming to the high school. When we look at budget expense, the largest piece of our budget is salaries. We are a people-driven business, and 76.2% are salaries. The next behind that would be purchase services at 11.6, which is right down on the bottom in the light purple. What's also really important to us is within the salaries, where is that salary money going? Are we spending too much on administration? Or are we targeting our dollars to the classroom? And the goal is to target it to the classroom. And we're over 90% of our dollars are straight to our classroom. That's what we want. From a transportation expense, what you'll see on the blue on the right-hand side, that's public school transportation, which is 48% of the budget. The yellow, goldish color on the top left is our special education, including preschool. And the gray on the bottom left is the private school. And private school is 18% of the transportation budget. One of the challenges we're finding with transportation is a year like this year where transportation for private school is going up 10%, where public school is only going up 3%. Now that it's sitting in our operational budget for private and for public, it used to sit on the town side. The school district operating budget must make up that difference for private school busing. And that's a fairly new issue for the public school. School lunch fund, what you'll see on the top left are the actual reimbursements at 1.1 million. That's unusual to see for us. And again, it has to do with the COVID free program where we had a lot more reimbursements. On the right-hand side, what you're seeing is personnel in the blue, and then you're seeing the gray with supplies. That's mainly food. Of course, that's where the bulk of the money goes for school lunch fund. When we look at some of our historical trends, this is a chart that goes back to 2002, 2003. We had over a decade where we were funded, where it was covering all of our contractual expenses, and we could actually maintain the school district with what we needed for curriculum, what we needed for professional development, what we needed for contractual salaries, utilities. Then we went through starting a decade where our budgets were down to 2.2, 1.2. Our contractual obligations are much more than that, which means we are consistently cutting out of the budget. We've been trying to turn that around the last few years. We've done a good job of reestablishing our curriculum budget. As you know, we rolled out brand new math curriculum last year. We're excited about that. We've also have brand new foundations in our early literacy. So we've been working hard to turn that around. Some of the budget drivers that we have, of course, special education is always a challenge for us because you don't know on any given year who's going to move into the district and if they have a unique need. I do want to credit Stacy Holligenthaler, who has really worked hard on that outplacement and settlement number. When we have a student who's in an outplacement, we actually can apply for reimbursement, and you'll see those numbers in just a few slides. When they're on the settlement line, we don't get any reimbursement for them. So if we have students who are on a settlement, we can move them to the outplacement line. It doesn't impact services. It doesn't cause any relationship issue with the families. It's the way that we budget. And by doing that, it then increases our excess costs and funding for special education that we get from the state. When you look at the operations and management side of our utilities budget, the orange is the electric service, which is the largest part of our utilities. And sadly, this year, it's also the one that's going up tremendous amount. In the BET guidelines, they showed the utilities going up for electric at 54%. We've been checking with the town. The first selectman's office right now is tentatively budgeting at 40%. This budget has 27.2% built in for actual. If you go budget to budget, it's 33. That was still an increase in this budget of $665,000 just for electricity. When we look at some of our budget priorities, we want to keep on track with our curriculum management plan. That is key for us. We also want to continue implementation of our special education action plan. We've made tremendous progress there, really developing some wonderful relationships with our special education families, and we want to stay on that pathway. We want to meet our legal mandates, things like adding that 1.5 preschool section. And the reason it says 1.5 is in this budget, we're really hoping by projecting that we add one class in September and the second class will get added in January. We did that for the first time last year. It worked really well. And that saves us half a section at least on any given year that we can do that. We also want to keep our professional development fully funded. It's important for our staff and our administrators. Some of the challenges in this budget, reducing the budget during such a high inflation time. We prepare this budget, 18 months out from when we're going to actually be utilizing this budget to get through June of 2024. We truly don't know what's going to happen with items like technology contracts. We have some contracts right now where companies are wanting to increase 8%, 10%, 15%. We're in a very unusual climate from the inflation standpoint. We also are concerned about the skyrocketing cost of utilities, especially the electric, the cost of substitutes. And this just really has to do not so much with just having a general sub, but where we are still with COVID. A lot of people think we're totally out of COVID. The reality is we've had several hundred cases of COVID already this year. When somebody tests positive for COVID, the doctor is still having them stay home for 5 days. So that impacts your actual substitute in making sure that we have enough money in there to cover for people to be out a week at a time. We don't know next year if that will still be the case. If you think back at the beginning of COVID, it was 14 days. So it's better now at 5, but we don't know in a year from now what it'll look like. Special education tuition could have an unforeseen expense. We've all seen that. Facility staffing overtime, again, same thing. If we have positive cases of COVID, especially as we go into winter, we must have our buildings cleaned, which means you must have a sub for them as well, and you're paying overtime for that. And kindergarten could increase by another 3 sections, and we may not go down in somewhere else for K-5. We'll be watching that closely. Another challenge we have is just our general school supplies and services. And this is just one example. We give all of our buildings a per pupil allocation. That's how they buy paper and things that they need for their schools. This is the elementary per pupil, and it's at $265 per student that they have enrolled. And you can look at, it goes all the way back to 2012. It has not changed. We are still using the same number that we used in 2012. So what you see with the orange line, that's applying inflation to that. So we truly are asking all of our buildings to run with less. So what are some of the budget adjustments that we're looking at inside this budget? It is a challenge budget, and it definitely was a challenge to put together. We are looking at a reduction of 1.0 in K-5 specials, and this is due to decreased enrollment, which means music, PE, art. Reduction in stipends and growth development payments, just over 100,000. Reduction of 3.0 K-5 elementary classrooms, which I referenced before. Reduction of 4.0 middle school FTE. Reduction of 5.0 at the high school. And FTE is full-time equivalent, so it could be an entire person, or it can be a 0.2, 0.2, 0.2 that adds up to 1.0. reduction of 7.0 non-certified positions across pre-K through 12, reduction of 1.0 equivalent administrative assistants, addition of 665,000 for electricity, the addition of 1.5 federally mandated for preschool, addition of 0.5 assistive technology, which again is for special education, addition of 2.0 social workers for elementary, and 1.0 co-teacher to continue the successful co-teaching program we've just started here at Cos Cob for kindergarten and first grade. So when we look at all of those staff reductions and then the additions, we have a net total of 8.0 certified reductions and 5.1 non-certified, or 13.1 positions. And that is just over $1 million in salary, which also will have a savings on the town side of somewhere around at least 250,000 in benefits. We've also been asked to look at consolidation and shared services. We do this every year. And, this slide has been on here for the last 3 years because we do so much. We really do want the community to know how much we consolidate and work with the town. The town manages our park and rec. We manage the print shop, even things in HR and purchasing, all of those areas. We already work together. We share systems. We'll continue to have those conversations, but we don't want to consolidate where it doesn't make sense if it doesn't have cost savings. If it's going to cost us more or we're not going to be as efficient, we do not think that we want to be consolidating. But again, we're still looking at that and working with the town. We want to take this opportunity just to say thank you to all of our community partners. We have so many in Greenwich, probably more than anywhere I've ever seen for a public school. They do everything from early intervention services, after school tutoring. They help families for food insecurity. The amount of resources in Greenwich is unbelievable. And we're incredibly grateful as a public school to have such a strong relationship with all these different organizations. So when we look at the proposed operating budget, the driver, again, the 4 top items are salaries and contractual payments, special education tuition, utilities, services, and transportation. That makes up the total increase that we're going to be requesting, which is just over 5 million. We do want to mention the revenue to the town of Greenwich, which we don't ever usually mention, but we think it's really important, especially the top 5. The special education excess cost, again, it's up to 1.3 million. We're up almost 400,000. And that, again, is the effort of Dr. Holly Gataller, really trying to be responsible. She knows that money flows to the town. It doesn't flow to our budget. And she's still working incredibly hard to be as responsible as she can. The other thing is the education cost sharing. That's a very small amount. That's what the state gives back to Greenwich for education. Tuition in preschool, when we go up a section, we do go up a little bit in tuition from our families that are on the peer side, not the special education tuition. For Medicaid, we're actually going up there. We've had a budgeted number of 200,000, but again, before Dr. Holly Gataller, we were only bringing in about 40. We believe this year we'll hit that 200,000, which we're excited about that. So again, we have a lot of senior cabinet who are ultra responsible, really trying to do the right thing to run as efficient as possible. So our proposed operating budget this year is 182,165,266, which is a 2.9% increase, 5.2 million. And again, you'll see revenue is going up at least right around that 521,000 mark. Now, one thing I want to be sure and mention tonight, because I know we're going to have a lot of conversations and a lot of questions. The superintendent's budget matches the BET guidance of 2.9%. But I want to mention the risk that's involved in the budget. This is what it looks like to be at 2.9%. Probably the 3 areas we are most concerned about with this budget. The first would be utilities. If we wanted to match what the town, what the selectman's office is tentatively thinking they're going to budget at 40%, we would need $312,000, almost $313,000 in this budget. If we wanted to put an additional $600,000 in the budget, just not knowing what it's going to be like next year for the temporary services, that would increase that line by 51.2%. If we wanted to increase our overtime again by 300,000 to provide more in line and really still under what our actual was last year, that would be 300,000. That would boost the budget to 3.63%, and it would increase by 1.2 million just in those 3 items. Now, we wouldn't bring you a budget that we didn't feel like we could operate. I think what we're saying to the Board of Education, it's an incredibly tight budget. There's not a lot of wiggle room for any sort of adjustment. If something really unforeseen, like enrollment, comes in a lot higher, it means that we have to go in eyes wide open, that we may have to go for an interim if we're faced with a real challenge. So again, the BET guidance was at 2.9%. And our proposal is right at that 2.9%. We understand that it's a challenging year. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Jones. That was a great idea to have us sit over there. And like I said, there would be no questions tonight, but I have to say that is, I'm really impressed that you hit the BET guidelines. It's been a few years, I think, since we were able for the superintendent to do that. Usually it's been the board sort of continuing to work on the operating. And I know this was a particularly challenging time. And so I think that you deserve a lot of credit for you and your team finding a way to do that. But I think it is also important that you noted the risks. So I know we'll all be analyzing that over the next few weeks. So as I mentioned, the process now, as we've talked about in the past years, is that this is a lot, I think, for us all to tackle. My first question to you is, when do we get our books and when do we get this presentation?
We will have this posted online either tonight or tomorrow, and we have the books ready to pass out. We can bring them forward right now. And if I could take this opportunity to say thank you to the senior team. They have worked so hard, and to our entire cabinet, all of our senior team, and then to Blaze and his team. This is his first budget, and I think it's definitely a challenging one to jump right in and to build a budget like this. So thank you.
A very good point. Thank you. So I think what we've done in the past is the next time we meet, we don't talk about the budget. We talk again about this in early December, I believe December 1st. Thank you. So, but I imagine you want the questions to kind of keep coming, and do you want to do this sort of within a week? You want a first round as soon as possible? Okay. But with the goal to be to sort of continue to just take a set and answer them, how do you want to run this process?
You know, if we could aim to get as many questions as possible before the 18th, what it does do is allow us to start answering them so that people aren't trying to work so much over their Thanksgiving holiday.
What do you guys think? Anyone object to that? We're good with that? Ms. Downey, and then
I just want to be sure we're clear on how to communicate them. And do you want them all just emailed to you? Just because I feel like sometimes we tend to get a little back and forth and things get lost in the shuffle. So if you're the clearinghouse and we all know that, it's helpful.
Yes, I'll be the clearinghouse if you send them to me, and then I'll send them to Jonathan, who will populate the document for us.
Karen.
Just because I know how difficult it is to oftentimes look through this glorious book that I have in front of me. Will we be able to ask or request for some of this to be sent digitally? It's easier to do a search, if I'm looking for things. Yeah.
Maybe.
Blaze is looking at me confused. Perfect. I can do the search in a PDF. Thanks.
Better. Karen.
I was just gonna suggest. Okay, are we good? I don't know. Hello. Okay, thank you. With respect to the questions, right? We may have a lot of the same questions, and there's no need to duplicate questions. And I think we'd all maybe benefit for knowing what questions are being asked, so that we're all not saying the same thing over and over again. So I was wondering if we could put together a process in which we could eliminate that based upon how you would suggest we do that.
So once the questions start coming in, we'll have a blank document so you can see each other's questions, and we'll be working on a duplicate that we're trying to answer at the same time.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, I told Cody 7:45, and I've never beaten a time, but that's impressive, isn't it?
Do you want us to talk for 10 more minutes to be on the
Right.
nose for you?
I didn't really take any money, so it's unfortunate. Okay, Laura?
I would, ooh, so loud. I would just like to say thank you for the Schools at a Glance page, which we love. Thank you for bringing that back. I'm very excited. Thank you, Blaze. It even has pictures. Thank you.
All right, this was very impressive again. Thank you to everyone. And I know this is just the beginning of a process. So everyone get some sleep, and can I get a motion to adjourn? Thank you, Karen. Second, Laura. Okay, all in favor? Michael? All right, that passes 8-0. Thank you, everyone. Good night.